Stash Wyslouch here. Welcome to Ideas for the Curious and Adventurous Bluegrass Musician. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Your support is highly appreciated. Today we're going to talk about 12-tone music and how to combine it with bluegrass and related music. The 12-tone technique was a revolutionary way of looking at music and tonality and the way notes relate to each other. Most commonly associated with the second Viennese school of composition. That's Arnold Schoenberg, Anton Webern, Alban Berg. Very cool music. I recommend going and checking out these three composers particularly. There's a lot of ways to interpret the technique, and there's a lot of ways to manipulate the general idea of what people consider 12-tone. We're not going to get too into the nitty-gritty. I just think pointing out a few cool things and applying them to the framework of bluegrass music could be an interesting thing to find some new combinations for our ears and our fingers. One of the raw materials of 12-tone music, or the 12-tone technique, is the 12-tone row. A 12-tone row is a group of all 12 notes of the chromatic scale put into a specific order. A 12-tone row could be as simple as just starting with a C note, and then you put the rest of the chromatic notes right after it, so it's just one big chromatic scale. As long as we're planting seeds for the curious and adventurous bluegrass musician, I thought it would be cool to use a fiddle tune's shape to generate a bunch of different tone rows and see what that sounds like. So we'll still retain the rhythm of Soldier's Joy, we'll still retain the vague shape of Soldier's Joy, but all of a sudden we're going to insert a ton of 12-tone rows into it, separate 12-tone rows. First, here's what the tune sounds like. I want to insert a ton of different 12-tone rows into that first shape of Soldier's Joy. Let's just take that. So we'd start, let's say with the D. Again, we're in the sound laboratory. We just want to find new sounds. I don't care if they sound like Grammy-nominated jewels. So we have a D. We're not going to play that D again, or any D for that matter, until we exhaust all the notes of the chromatic scale available to us. But we're going to keep the shape of Soldier's Joy. So we got it. So that phrase is 11 notes. So when I got to the 11th note, I wanted to finish up the tone row. So instead of just playing one note, I played a double stop at the end, 2 notes at the same time. All right, now what? Now I go through the whole shape of all of Soldier's Joy, and I just insert, kind of at random, but I begin to start making some choices based on the combinations of notes that I like to see and the way the notes start to organize themselves. And this is one time through the Soldier's Joy. So, as you go through this really tedious process of taking the shape of something like Soldier's Joy and putting 12-tone rows on every 12 notes, basically, one interesting thing is you'll find note combinations you probably wouldn't have found otherwise. Sometimes the shape wouldn't lend itself to completing the 12-tone row in a place where maybe I wanted it to complete. So maybe the shape would suggest that there's only 2 notes left in the A part, but there's still 6 notes left in my 12-tone row. So instead of just going, maybe I'd go. So that way you get a lot of new phrasing options too. And that was kind of a secondary effect I wasn't expecting when I first started experimenting with this. Alright, I want to try it with one more example. I want to take the tune Bear Me Beneath the Willow. First, we're going to start with our skeletal form, the thing we're going to manipulate. So let's define that. 2, 3, 4. Bear Me Beneath the Willow. We're going to make a 12-tone. Now we're going to do a slightly different process than we did for Soldier's Joy. So one thing while checking this out, I noticed, for example, is that this melody can be divisible into chunks of 3 notes. Here's what I mean. So you could have 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Okay, interesting. This is a very mathematical process, but again, we just want to find some new sounds for our ears and our fingers. I'm going to define each one of these groups of 3s. I'm going to define the first note as zone 1, the second note zone 2, the third note zone 3. Now I want to construct a 12-tone row. So zone 1 is going to have a set of 4 notes, zone 2 is going to have another set of 4 notes, and zone 3 is going to have another set of 4 notes. Each zone has its own set of independent notes that doesn't overlap with the other zone. I chose the first set of 4 notes, a G, B, D, and a C sharp. So a G major triad with a C sharp. For my second set of notes, I chose an A, C, E, and a B flat. An A minor triad with a B flat. And for the last set of 4 notes, well, we don't have a choice because they've been determined for us based on the fact that we already came up with the first 2 chords. And it would be an F, E flat, and an A flat, and an F sharp. For each one of these notes, when we're playing the melody, we can say instead of playing just one note, we're going to play each one of these notes as a 4-note chord, a big chunky thing, and we're going to still follow the shape up, down, 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 down. We're going to follow the shape, but the thing that will determine the notes, for example, when we go down from zone 1 to zone 2, we know that we could use a note from zone 1, then we're going to go down to one of the notes of zone 2, and then the remaining 3 notes we can use to harmonize that note that went down. So this might be a little confusing, but let's just put it into practice. First note of the melody, as in da na 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 na. So we surround that with the corresponding chord. So we got a D. So for our zone 1, we have the remainder G, C sharp, and B. There's our first note. For our second, for our zone 2, the melody goes up. It happens to have an E. So we got berry. Okay, there's an E. We fill out the rest of the notes of zone 2. That's an A, C, and a B flat. Berry. Now we got to go down. Now the normal melody goes down to D. But we want to keep within our mutually exclusive 12-tone cluster. So we'll go down to a note from zone 3. And I decided to go down to an E flat. So the melody up top would go bury me. Interesting. Now we surround it with the notes that we have. So we've got bury me. Let's listen to that. Crazy chords. Okay, so now I went through the whole tune the whole group of 3 notes, zone 1, zone 2, zone 3, and I figured out my own arrangement with this. I also thought that this kind of worked nicely as a ragtimey fingerpicky thing. As I was doing this, sometimes I said, you know, I really just, that note in zone X, whatever zone I was forced to, wasn't working. And so I'd switch it around sometimes. So sometimes I'd go zone 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 3, 2, 1, 3, 2, back to 1, 2, 3. So at the end of the day, when I look at the whole form, actually, all the notes have been played an equal amount of times, even if there's been some slight changes of order. We might find some new cool chords that we wouldn't have found otherwise with this system, because the 12-tone row kind of pushes us back into a corner and says, well, you got to use these notes, figure out where to put on the guitar. I wouldn't necessarily play an A minor with a B flat on it intuitively. It's a very outside sound. But now that I'm going to go through this arrangement, maybe I'll be more prone to do it in the future. I'd like to thank the people who influenced this video: Marty Epstein, Charles Warren, Max Johnson, Arnold Schoenberg, Tony Trishka.
Please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Your support is highly appreciated.